Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Emma, for those of you who are new. I'm guessing a lot of you are here because you follow my Instagram stories. For those of you who don't follow my Instagram stories, basically I am redoing one of my mom's apartment properties. This is one of her rental properties. There's 4 units. Most of the units look pretty good, but this unit was rough. Like, it was bad. So basically my mom put me in charge of fixing it up. So I've already painted the cabinets. I've already done the bathroom. Let me show you where we're at with that. Look at that shower. I did that shower on my own, guys. I'm like really proud of that. But anyways, let me show you some before footage in case you're curious. Ooh, yeah, that's rough. So anyways, today I am in the home stretch. I'm finally finishing everything up and we're going to be doing the countertops. So this is what the countertops look like right now. As you can see, they're pretty rough. There's a bump here, there was a hole there, there was an entire chip out of the counter right there. Like, they're ugly all around. Bathrooms are even worse. The bathroom counters are blue. So let's fix these bad boys up. Alright guys, this is the paint that I'm going to be using. This is the Rustoleum Countertop Coating. This paint is specifically made for countertops. Okay, so I did get 2 colors in this paint. I got a dark gray and I got a white. I'm going to be using both of them to try to get the look that I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to go for a darker countertop because I feel like it's going to stay cleaner. I feel like it's going to look better. And also, I'm a little worried because this is an oil-based paint. I would be a little concerned that the white paint might yellow over time. For those of you who don't know, sometimes oil paints can yellow over time. So I'm going to use mostly gray but a little bit of white. Okay, so I'm in the bathroom right now. As you can see, it's really gross. Let me back up. Yes. Okay, so there is caulk here. I'm going to take a razor blade, strip all of that caulk. This is the razor blade that I'm using. As you can see, this one's really dirty. So I'm going to put in a fresh blade and then basically just scrape under and scrape down and pull all this caulk out. Okay, all my caulk is removed. Make sure you do it carefully so that doesn't happen. I got really lucky. I don't have any caulk in the kitchen that I need to remove. It was just in the bathroom. So once you're done with that, you're gonna need to clean your countertops good. Make sure you have all of the grease off. I've already done that. TSP is really awesome for that, or soap. Just make sure you get all of the dirt, grease, and grime off your countertops. That is single-handedly one of the most important steps. Next, I'm going to sand my countertops. I already sanded mine with a 220 grit sandpaper, and I feel like that wasn't strong enough. Basically what you want is you want to sand your countertops until there's absolutely no shine to them. If there's any shine to your countertops, the paint will not stick. So make sure that they're totally clean and shine-free. But because I feel like that 220 sandpaper wasn't strong enough, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do probably like a 150 grit sandpaper, which is going to be just a little bit rougher. So I'm going to go over it one more time and I will come back. One other thing that I do want to mention is that I did have a couple chips in the countertops. For example, this spot right here, this chip was lifting. So I peeled it up and I filled that with wood filler. I just followed the directions on the wood filler can. It worked really, really well. I did a little bit there and a little bit there because there was a hole there. So fill your holes and then sand. Okay, I have all of this sanded with the orbital sander. I am going to take a little bit of loose sandpaper and fold it up just so that I can get in the creases like that. I'm going to do that by hand, just in all the little tight spots. You can definitely do this whole thing by hand, but I would not by any means recommend it. I would definitely buy a sander. I also have this little piece right here that's coming up, so I'm just going to break it off and make sure that that's clean and sand that edge really good as well. Alright, now that my countertops are sanded really well, I'm going to vacuum the dust off, which might sound weird, but I'm going to vacuum it, and then I'm going to take this lint-free cloth that I just dropped on the floor, and I'm going to clean the counters really, really good with one last little wipe of TSP. In case you haven't noticed, sanding is the most important, cleaning is the most important. Honestly, a lot of people don't realize this, but with most painting projects, the prep work is the most important. It's debatably more important than the actual painting itself. So I'm gonna finish cleaning these and then we can get started. Make sure you read the directions very closely. That is very important. The directions say you can use a nap roller or a foam roller. I'm gonna use a foam roller because I feel like this works better for like furniture and finish work, but you can definitely use either. I've seen people use both online. I'm just gonna use the foam roller. This is the color I'm going to be using. The name of it is Putty. Also, most people would tape off like their sink and their cabinets and their walls and stuff. I'm just gonna be very honest. I'm comfortable with a paintbrush. I paint a lot. Also, I have a steady hand. Also, I just all around have way too much trust in myself. But if you're not the best with paint and if you don't have a steady hand, maybe tape off the areas. That might be a good idea. But I'm gonna pass. Right off the bat, this stuff smells really strong. I would highly recommend a fan. I didn't bring one, but you should have a fan. Anyways, I have this little itty bitty brush. It's nothing fancy. More than likely I won't be able to wash this paint out because it is oil based. So don't get a super fancy brush because it's just gonna have to go in the garbage. But I'm gonna take this and start doing all the edge work. Now that I have all the edges painted, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start rolling the surfaces. I'm basically going to do that process on all of these counters, edges first, and then roll the surface. I will point out the paint is pretty thick and it's pretty sticky. Fortunately, it does smooth over pretty well. Like, I don't really see a lot of brush strokes. I would recommend using a brush for your sides and your fronts, just because I've noticed the paint does run a little bit, so I keep getting like little drips on the side. So just make sure you're pretty cautious and keep an eye on it because you will have to touch that up. Okay, I just finished the first coat on the kitchen counters and it looks really good. Here's how it looks so far. So some things that I want to point out, like some little tips and tricks that I have found helpful. Oh yeah, I did smudge some paint on the wall. I have to touch up the wall paint anyway, so that's okay, I'll cover that later. But some things that I did notice. The paint is a little runny, so when you're working on like edges or any vertical surfaces, just be aware the paint might drip down the side, so you do have to keep a good eye on that. So to kind of combat that, I've been doing the edge work and the front, basically all vertical pieces, I've been doing with the brush. So when you do those vertical pieces and the edges, use a very sparing amount of paint on your brush. Use just a little bit. The thinner the better, because that will drip easily. As for the actual countertops where I rolled, the surfaces, you can actually use like a pretty thick layer of paint because it will kind of level itself out, but you definitely have to use thin coats on the front edges and the back edges. So just be aware of that. It's better to work in thin, even coats and just make sure that the texture is really even. And then with my foam roller, the last thing I'm going to mention with the foam roller, don't push too hard with it. I've had much better luck if I just really gently roll the roller across the surface of the counter. It might take a while, but it's working better than if you push hard, because if you push hard, you do get little lines in the counter. So the last thing I'm going to point out is like along that edge, see if there's a little bump. Don't worry about those little itty bitty imperfections, because I am going to have to take caulk over that top edge anyways, which will kind of camouflage any of those little mistakes. Okay, I just finished the bathroom and I'm in here right now. As you can see, there's like a few little spots, like there's one. I don't think that I cleaned the counters as good as I should have, so warning, make sure you have absolutely everything cleaned off the counters, every little bit of dust, or that will happen. You live and you learn. But anyways, I'm done painting the bathroom, done painting the kitchen. I took my paint tray, I put it inside of a garbage bag, wrapped it up, put it inside of the fridge. I'm hoping that that will keep it from drying up. All right, it has been 24 hours since I painted the first coat. I'm back here again, and it actually looks pretty good. I think it dried really well overall. Let me show you how it looks. The first thing I'm gonna note is it actually didn't dry quite as shiny as I thought it would, which I think is good. It dried more of like a satin finish. I was expecting more of a semi-gloss, but I think the more satiny finish looks good. So there's a little bit of shine to it, but it's not like high shine, which is what I was worried about. As you can see, there's a couple spots that the brush didn't cover fully, but that's no big deal because we're gonna go over it again. The one thing that I will point out is the texture. I don't know if you can tell, but like if you look right here, there's a little bit of like, I don't want to say bubbling, but there's a little bit of like a spoogey look from where I painted it. Not a big deal. Also, this spot here and this spot here, there was little bumps. I just took sandpaper. I took a 220 grit, which is a little bit more on the fine side. and I really gently sanded it with my finger, and then I just took this lint-free cloth to get rid of those little bumps. So if you find any little bumps, I would recommend sanding them very, very carefully. The last update I'm gonna give, this is the paint that I put in the fridge, and it actually worked pretty well. The paint is a little bit, it's a little thick, it's a little gummy, but I think once I pour a little more in there, it'll be totally fine. So I'll be storing the paint in the fridge from now on, seeing as how well that worked. All right, I just finished the second coat of paint, and I'm definitely glad that I sanded over those little bumps. I think that was a really good idea. It definitely helped. Just make sure that you really clean that dust off before you do the second coat. Also, make sure that the first coat is fully dried. Mine was dry for 24 hours, so I was good to sand. Just be careful when you sand, just be really gentle. I also wanted to point out, I've now done 2 coats on the little bathroom and the kitchen, and this is how much paint I have left. Can's about half full, and I'm done with this now, so the paint stretched pretty far, but also I used pretty thin coats, so that could be why. All right, it has been another 24 hours, so day 3, and here's where I'm at. So overall, the kitchen countertops are pretty smooth. You can see I already took some sandpaper on the few little spots. If you look in certain light, you can kind of see that there's like some texture going on. You can definitely see the texture of the roller. Not a huge deal, but it isn't the most consistent. But I will definitely say, if you just want a solid color for your counter, you're probably gonna have some texture on there. It kind of seems inevitable. As for the bathroom counter, it all looks pretty good except for this back corner. You can see there's texture there and a little bit here. This is really the only spot that it did that in, and I think that what happened, I think I brushed the paint on, the paint half dried, and then I brushed over it again, which was a big no-no, because when I brushed over the already half dry paint, it kind of lifted the base layer a little bit funky, and I think that's what happened there. So I guess to avoid this, I would recommend putting on your first layer of paint and doing a good job. So don't keep going over and over and over again, because that's just gonna kind of mess it up. But other than this little corner, all in all, it looks, I think, pretty good in both rooms. I watched a bunch of videos and I did a lot of research to see how people were creating like that texture for their countertops, and I feel like this is the best way to do it. So I'm gonna be using plastic grocery bags. I'm basically gonna crinkle this bag up in a ball and dip it in paint and then dip it on the countertop. We'll see how it works. I'm gonna start in this back corner that nobody really sees. That way, if I mess up, it'll be in a spot that nobody will notice. All right, so I have a mixture of white paint and gray paint. I'm kind of swirling it together. And then I have a plastic bag. And then I'm crinkling it up really good so I can get all those little lines in there. And then I'll take a little bit of paint. I was initially dapping it in there, but that didn't really work as well. So this seemed to be working a little bit better. And then kind of rotate your hand as you go about it. And then move the bag around so that it's not always the same pattern. And then I'll go in maybe with a little more white.
Audio Hub. Audio Hub. Audio Hub.
So when I took a step back and actually looked at the countertops, I felt like all the white that I was painting on looked a little bit overwhelming, and it also made it look kind of fake. So I ended up going over it with the gray, which you can kind of see right now, which I feel made it look much more realistic and overall just a lot better. Okay, I think this section looks really good, probably better than the rest of it, but this section looks particularly good. Let me show you what I did to get this look specifically. First, what I did is I took a mixture of the white and the gray and I just put it all over the place like this. It doesn't have to look pretty. It's okay if there's little spots. So I did this all over, and then, I don't know if you can tell, this one has a bunch of white. This one looks way better, but it's mostly gray. So after putting the white and gray mixture on the counter, I kind of let it like half dry, and then I took my grocery bag again and I just put gray over the top of that to hide most of the white. Another thing that I want to mention, you could definitely paint your countertops one solid color like how mine were, just gray at the beginning, but the thing that sucks about that is it's nearly impossible to do one solid color without showing like bristle marks or brush strokes. So the nice thing about doing this method is you can use that plastic bag to kind of cover all of those imperfections, so it works really, really well. The last thing that I want to point out, I read a lot of reviews on this stuff and there was really, really mixed reviews. Some people were saying that their countertops were never drying, they were gooey forever. Some people said that they had this stuff on their counters for 3 years, no problems. I'm hoping this works well. I think it will. I think the secret to making it work is following the directions, obviously. Don't use a primer. It says not to use a primer on the can, so don't use a primer, and use really thin layers and allow ample drying time. All right, I'm back. Another 24 hours has passed, so it is day 4. My countertops are dry. They're not hardened and cured, but they are dry, so I can touch them, but I'll wait a couple days to actually set stuff on them. But anyways, I have already taken a primer and touched up all of the little spoogey marks on the wall. So I've already covered that. Unfortunately, you do need a primer, so you have to prime and then paint. Regular latex paint will not stick over the top of the gray countertop paint. So prime, and then I will use my touch-up paint to touch all of that up. I was initially gonna caulk in the kitchen, but I feel like the lines still look pretty smooth, so I don't even think I'm gonna caulk in here. But I definitely do have to caulk in the bathroom. So let me touch up the paint, I'll caulk everything, clean everything up, and I'll show you how it looks. All right, I just finished everything with this place, so let me give you the final check-in and then I'll be done. All right, so this is the bathroom countertop. I have siliconed. I actually use silicone, not caulk. Silicone's a little bit more durable. Silicone the edges. It definitely doesn't look like real stone, but I think it definitely looks like a fresh laminate countertop. Alright, that is it for me. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Overall, I think this worked out great, but I'd love to hear from you guys if you have anything to say. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.